I'm a creature of excess. Without a doubt, like anything that I do way too much. And so I know moderation is the wiser move. It's much more wise to just have one and just, control yourself. So that plan failed for me. It fucking went right out the window. It was like, all right. So now I try to just harness
Yeah.
my affinity for things and just go with it. So it's
Yeah.
like when it comes to food or exercise, well, I guess my point is like I just try to get addicted to cool shit, right? Like I try to get if I'm like, okay, I'm gonna eat right, then I'm that guy that like I'm gonna eat right so well, I'm gonna track everything and I'm gonna measure everything. And so I just have to go that way. If I don't go that way, then I'll just be a bucket of ice cream in. So no matter which way I go, it's gonna be a lot. And I know that. So I'm just gonna like make sure whatever it is, I can have a
Interesting.
lot. Like
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Another fantastic day for an interview because I've got Ryan Penley with me. He is a man who, like me, has developed quite a number of coping mechanisms that, with hindsight, were maybe not so clever, but they very much suited us at a time when we were in pain, when trauma was the worst thing to experience, or the flow-on effects, and it was so much easier to try to escape reality. So I can't wait to compare notes. Ryan, welcome to my show.
well, thanks for having me. This is an amazing. It's a blessing, really, to be here this morning for me, and talk about some things, some difficult problems that people have out there. And I feel honored. Thank you.
And we were already before the show, we were sort of joking that 4 o'clock in the morning was interesting times for us in the past, isn't it? The 4 o'clock right now, you're waking up naturally and ready to kiss the world and say, okay, let's have a good time. You did the same many years ago. How was 4 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
for you then?
Yeah. I read about this time. I was still trying to find the drug dealer that is still awake. But if you're a good drug dealer, you would be, right? But so like I'm on the phone trying to keep the party going. So
Oh,
things are
shit.
different these days.
When did you start? When was sort of the first memory that you've got where you realized that, wow, that feels good? What is that?
Yeah, this I was a young man, young teenager. I was, probably 13, and I had a couple of beers, and next thing I know, I had enough confidence to talk to the girls at a party, and I thought, okay, yeah, I want to do that again. I'm going to do that a lot, right? Because I'm feeling no repercussions. I'm feeling all of the confidence. I've lost all of the inhibitions, and so I'm like, I woke up and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that all the time. So, eventually I moved to the epicenter of all parties, Las Vegas, but, we'll get to that maybe later.
And it's so easy. It's so beautiful, isn't it? And 13 is quite an early start. Um, was alcohol all around you there? Was it in your household? Was it with your parents? Did they drink?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my alcoholism runs in my family. And of course, there's that whole, there's plenty of schools of thought. There's camps of thought of whether or not I'm an alcoholic because of my parents being an alcoholic.
Mm.
Alcohol was around, but I was raised by my grandparents, which my grandfather, an alcoholic, severe alcoholic, but he was that classic 50s father alcoholic, 2 martinis for lunch, a fifth of scotch at night, but he never beat anybody. He wasn't hurting anybody other than himself. And then, of course, his health. But
Mm.
it wasn't like, oh, he comes home and he kicks the dog and he yells at the kids. Like, that wasn't it. He went to work and he just, again, like you mentioned earlier, he coped. His coping mechanism was copious amounts of alcohol.
Mm.
So alcohol was around, and it wasn't given the weight that it had affected my family. everybody was pretty much ignoring the fact that I had tore apart many of our lives. My uncle, my mother, my father was an alcoholic, and my mother and father, that I don't have a relationship with them. But so alcohol was around, but nobody was telling the truth about the alcohol. Nobody was telling the story that, our health has been declined because of this substance that we've chose to use all the time. So it was most certainly, it wasn't necessarily available to me. Like, I didn't go into a liquor cabinet. That wasn't a kind of thing, but it was familiar. But I don't think that anybody was being honest about it because of their own scenarios, own circumstances.
But that's hard because this was such a different generation, and it was such different life then, where alcohol was just part and parcel of it. A good man, and he holds his liquor, and everyone smokes, and it was a different time. So we can't necessarily be all negative about it. And I mean, nowadays you have got access to so many beautiful self-improvement ways, to coaching, to psychology, all these beautiful things that allow us nowadays to live a different life. That was not necessarily so easily available in those times. So it's quite easy for us to look harsh onto the generations before us. Tricky though, when you actually put yourself into their shoes. Oh, bloody hell. But yeah, I remember that as well. The ease with which you suddenly were disinhibited and just had a good time. And girls love that. I mean, they just like moths to a flame. Yeah, fair call. Did you do a lot of sport then? You seem to be a sportive guy now.
I developed my affection for the gym, if you say so. I like exercise. I like movement. I'm a kinetic kind of guy. I didn't link or take to the team sports. I didn't play many sports that maybe would have involved me in the communities. But I have been, and I think this is a strong element of my recovery, is my attention to personal fitness and health, and that kind of, I really, really enjoy this. It's like a pastime. It's, just exercising, going to the gym, lifting weights, things like that. Like, I'm a big fan of that. And because of that being like a hobby and being an enthusiast, I really think it was a real help. It was a real tool during my recovery, my sobriety, is physical exertion, because it gave me a good bucket to put my energy in,
Also, one of my guests previously called it depression hates a moving target. And she was right. I mean, physical exercise.
Amazing, yeah.
Isn't it? It's one of these things. I mean, but I mean, we have jumped far forward to you now, and to me now. That's very true. But yeah, when you're drinking, when you're using, you don't run so far because your alcohol drops out, and the cocaine gets blown off your hand. So no, you're careful in your movements. So did your weight behave? Did you, because with trauma, yes, we of course love to escape our reality, but also there are easier addictions like food. Many a times people balloon first, and then depression comes, and shame comes, and more guilt comes, and then give me the alcohol, and then give me the drugs. Was that part of you as well?
I'm a creature of excess. Without a doubt, like anything that I do way too much. And so I know moderation is the wiser move. It's much more wise to just have one and just, control yourself. So that plan failed for me. It fucking went right out the window. It was like, all right. So now I try to just harness my affinity for things and just go with it. So it's like when it comes to food or exercise, Well, I guess my point is like, I just try to get addicted to cool shit, right? Like I try to get, if I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat right, then I'm that guy that like, I'm going to eat right so well. I'm going to track everything and I'm going to measure everything. And so I just have to go that way. If I don't go that way, then I'll just be a bucket of ice cream in. So no matter which way I go, it's going to be a lot. And I know that. So I'm just going to like make sure whatever it is, I can have a
Interesting.
lot. Like, so I'll just get so many Brussels sprouts, right? I'll get so many Brussels sprouts and I'll eat them until I have no room for like nothing else. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I'm full and there's no room for all this shit. So
I love
that's
it.
my move. That's what I do. That's what I do now. I have
I
to
love
do
it.
that now. That's a,
Who are
otherwise I
you?
fail.
Where have you been all my life? Do you know what I've just done down there? I have steamed Brussels sprouts. I love them. Exactly. Fill your body up with some good fiber. Come on, man.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
it's the
so
truth.
so we have already developed some very good, better coping skills, I guess, than the 4 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
the drug dealer. But I mean, if you were to look back, the alcohol gave you the confidence and reduced the inhibition. Probably stopped the
Yeah.
anxiety a little bit. Just an educated guess. Um, where did that anxiety come from? Where did that feeling of being lost come from? Was that just the typical teenager? Or is there a story behind that?
I think that, I think the moral of the whole story for me is that, I'm kind of, I was egotistical. I was the whole, I got this guy. I got this. And I rode that story, into the sunset until it didn't work anymore. I was always the ego driven, like I can do everything right. And so I would suspect that the moment when it started like falling apart and anxiety started to rise is like once I realized, I started believing that I wasn't the hero my family believed I was. So I was, you know, sending money home at first, and I was living in Las Vegas, and things were going well. But the entire time, the monster of my substance use, the monster of my partying, sexual addiction, everything was growing, right? And
Mhm.
it didn't grow nearly as fast as people might imagine. I mean, I went quite a while doing well. People thought I was doing well, and by many objective standards, I was. I owned a couple of homes and all of these things, but it just started growing, and this anxiety started to grow because I knew I wasn't actually that person any longer. I started decaying morally. I started making decisions on my own selfish desires, my own what I called happiness. Like it was always like, oh, okay, where's my happy meter? It was always a saying, it was always a phrase that me and my friends always asked each other, like, where's your happy meter? And so I just lived and created, I curated a life of selfishness. And I knew this deep down. I knew this like in the back of my mind. I knew that like I wasn't being the person that my family and my friends all really knew and loved. And so I just started gaining space. And when that space again, like the Brussels sprouts or the cocaine or whatever, I just went into it. I ran from everybody I knew. And then it made the anxiety worse. It made it worse. It made everything worse because now I was hiding. And then when I was hiding, that's when the addiction, everything that when I went solo, hiding and just doing everything on my own, man, that's when things really just, I went right down the path to the darkest alley I could find.
Where was the money coming from?
Well, in Las Vegas, if you're a bartender in Las Vegas, you make it. So I was making hand over fist over there, man. And I don't think any bartender in the world makes as much money as a bartender in Las Vegas on the strip. So I had the funding for the party, and then if you carry that forward even a little bit further. I went to when I was in Colorado, I sold a high end whiskey. So the average serving of whiskey, 1 ounce of whiskey that I was selling was about $130. But it went up. It went up to like $900 for one serving. So like a few people would come in and their bar tab would be a couple $1,000. And here I am drinking that high on cocaine, and they knew it. People knew it. They're like, oh my God. Like, and I'd be running my mouth about this like 30-year whiskey. Just like I could taste it, right? Like I'm drinking it, like, oh, I taste notes of nutmeg and smoke and like all lies. I'm like telling them like, the stories. There was a whiskey that went to space. I remember this. Forgive me. I'm like going off and stuff. It was like a space whiskey. I was like, selling space whiskey to people. That this whiskey. It's a little ridiculous, right?
And that's the look. I was a wine connoisseur. I knew my wine. Yeah, right. After a bottle, you can give me Chateau the Pop. I wouldn't have known. It doesn't matter. Has it alcohol? Yeah, give it to me. Yeah. I know so many of us are exactly in that boat. But we create that culture. We create that. Ooh, we are sophisticated. We are fine. Yeah, right. Blah, give me more.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
That is the name of the game.
Oh, well, it was what it was. But it's interesting that you say hiding, because here you're a bartender in broad, well, not daylight, in broad nightlight. You were basically in a very protected environment. It was absolutely expected of you to drink. It was absolutely expected of you to, well, it depends on where you work. In most places here nowadays, it's no longer that, but certainly in the 80s, 90s. That is, it is, we went out, we had our typical bars or pubs kind of thing. Then they closed officially and we went to a nightclub, and then the bar owner brought a few of us back and a few girls back, and we opened up from the back, went inside the pub. Everyone threw a few a bit of money behind the bar, and it was open bar, and let's have fun. I remember that well. So yeah, this was all accepted then. So here you are.
Yeah,
so why did you have to hide?
I wanted to touch on something, because I remember when I got pulled over by a policeman in Las Vegas, and I had been drinking, and I told him I was a bartender on the Strip, and he goes, "Oh, okay." Like I was some kind of professional. Like, okay, just get home safe. He goes, "Why don't you just stop and have some coffee?" That's what he told me. He goes, "Stop and have some coffee somewhere." And I'm like, "You're just gonna let me go?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, just get home safe." I'm like, oh, "All right, I mean, it's insane." So forgive me, I totally blew past the question.
My point. It was a different time. Alcohol is certainly in certain areas and certain professions. It was, yeah, of course. Would you like to have a line of cocaine with your whiskey? It's just, yeah. Why the hiding? You were saying earlier on, you mentioned hiding. Where did the hiding come in?
Well, because I think that the hiding is because I morally inside, God and my conscious, my moral compass, it knew that I was just thinking of myself. I was thinking of nobody else. And so I think when you string enough days like that together, you become a selfish person. And I knew that. I knew that I was being selfish. And I was hiding that, like, I send money back home. I do this, I do that. I was finding all these different tricks and ways. I call it mental gymnastics, to believe my story. But looking back now, I know that I was only thinking of myself. I didn't give a shit about nobody. So, I think that's when I say hiding, right? Like, so I was still on stage on the Strip. I was still out there. Everybody's looking at me. I made sure that I looked the part. I acted the part, but inside, I was hiding from myself. And I wasn't picking up the phone calls from my grandma. I wasn't picking up the phone calls from people that cared about me. And it was because that was the moment that I had to hear a voice that knew better. So it was hard, that part. Yeah.
Understood. Because when you're going in certain circles and living in certain circles, of course, you surround yourself with others who are utilizing the same drugs or the same alcohol, the same coping mechanisms. So therefore, it's very normal for you. You normalize the drinking, you normalize the using. Then, of course, when grandma calls, yeah, I can see that. That is a very different story. Oh, shoot. But I mean, so you started age 13 and then probably school and then what, 18, 19, you went to Las Vegas. Is that about the timeline?
21, which is the prime time in the States. Yeah, 21 is when you can legally drink. And that's when I was smack dab and put myself right in the center.
How long did you stay in Sin City? How long did you play?
Yeah, so Las Vegas has a finite time span for anyone living there. I think no matter what, you leave broke. And so I had friends that lasted a couple of hours, and I was like, man, you got to go. You're going to be dead. You got to get the hell out of here, like right now. I'm not going to watch you just destroy yourself. So, and I see people that last a week. I lasted 11 years. It was 11 years. And so it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all bad. Like I said, I purchased a home. I was traveling. I was doing other things. It wasn't only cocaine and strippers and whatever. It was like there were times I did some cool things. I really did. But the like outdoor life and good life and saving my money and then the partying, they were just like switching. It was just like doing this switch. And before I knew it, they're completely switched. And so. Yeah, there's 11 years, but that's in Las Vegas time. That's considered a success.
I was about to say, man, that is not bad. How much was that lifestyle costing you? I mean, how much was the cocaine habit? How much was the alcohol? I mean, you didn't have to pay for the space whiskey. But still, it's there is a certain price tag to it.
Well, my method was I was working in the party. I got paid to be in the party, so I didn't go out. I wasn't really I wasn't necessarily. It didn't cost me much because I was working in the middle of it. Why the hell did I have to go pay to be at a club or go to whatever it might be? I'm already there. They came to me. It was like, oh,
okay.
The hell? And I was in charge. I was the one that had all the booze. I was like, man, this is the best spot to be if you're going to be anywhere, right? So
it's a shame.
That's what that was.
Yep. We were certainly renowned for our parties. And I always made sure that I was in a bar, being at the source. Absolutely true. Okay. So if life was so cool, and you pointed towards it that your whole behavior changed and your whole focus in life changed from maybe coping mechanisms towards more a bit harsh coping mechanisms, i.e. suicide in installments, as I call it. What changed? What was the moment when you realized, or what were the moments that led you to think maybe, just maybe, we need to stop?
Yeah, so I love that you just said moments, because I think the most common question I get is like, oh, where was the time? Was it that time? And you turned it around, and it's, man, it really wasn't that simple. It wasn't even close to being that simple. It was a series of catastrophic rock bottom moments. I was in a coma, diabetic coma. I gave myself diabetes because of the pills and alcohol. I was wanted in 3 states. My mom sent me to jail because she said I tried to cut her head off. She's also an alcoholic and drug addict. And, the accusations don't match up. But nonetheless, you got 2 people completely wasted and they have problems. Yeah, anyways, I went to jail. So I was homeless. So you have all these moments. The whole point is like, oh, the first part is admitting you have a problem. It's like, it was so blatant and in my face. I'm looking around. I'm like, yeah, there's a fucking problem. I'm like,
no proper addict will say he has got a problem. No, 95% of us will say, no, complete denial. No, I have no problem. John over there, look at him. Now, he is an alcoholic. But me, nah, I'm a social drinker. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't get me wrong. I was still doing the mental gymnastics. I knew I had to be at work, but somehow I managed to get into the liquor store, out of the liquor store, and half of a bottle of vodka deep within 7 minutes. I felt like I was in a time machine. I'd be like, how did I do it? I did it again. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, it was these moments stacked up, and then it was clear. So I guess the point of all that is like I couldn't deny it to myself. I knew things were messed up, so it was like time to get to work, right? And so I did that. I started getting to work, and I failed so many times. I tried different programs. I would be begging, like, hey, don't send me out there again. Don't kick me out of this program, or don't do this. There's a strong chance I'll die, and that chance was there for certain. But yeah, I scratched and clawed and scratched and tried to just stack some wins together, and eventually I did. And so, there was never a single moment. It was just a whole bucket of awful ones.
How long would you think that period lasted? I mean, how many 2x4s did you need to have on the head until well, actually, you sought help. You went into the rehab. So give yourself the grace there, man. So you knew things were not right, and you tried to get in. But obviously things didn't really stick. Why do you think that was?
I mean, it's hard. It's not when this is what I think is that people miss their mark. They miss their goals. My goal to be sober, because they think too large, or they think too far ahead, and they don't shrink the goal small enough to where they are at. And so that requires humility. It takes a lot of humility. But one of the smallest goals that I had many times was, I'm not going to drink for 15 minutes. I would have alcohol in my possession. I would say, I need it. I need this alcohol. So I have to have some. I have to have some in order to be normal and stop shaking.
Yeah.
But I'm going to leave it, and I'm not going to drink it for 15 minutes. I did this. I couldn't even tell you how many times I actually tried this and failed. Right. So it's like, when you shrink your goal to something that you can attain, then you're getting somewhere, because otherwise the goal is outside of your sphere of influence, your abilities.
Yeah.
And so people see somebody with sobriety for a year, they see somebody with, or they think about a week, and they can't do a week. You have to just do that hour. But that's the glory, is that hour turns into 2, it turns into 3, it turns into 24, it turns into 72, it turns into 7 days. And so that's where I was missing the mark, because I wasn't humble enough. And so I had to get real humble, and I had to get real serious, and then start stacking other things like accountability, and there's other tools that most people need, that are imperative to the process. So.
That's really good that you're saying that. So, so you don't think it was related to the type of rehab that you experienced, but more actually to the hurdles, or the I think the seriousness of your own addiction that was holding you back. Do I hear you right there?
Well, everyone has a unique story, a unique circumstance, and a unique. When I say story, that includes their character, the type of person that they are. Like, for instance, AA did not work for me. That wasn't the path that I took. I gave it a try. I wouldn't even say I gave it a great try. I went to a few meetings. It didn't land well with me. I went into another rehab. It was more of like a work program. And I thought to myself, like, man, I was in there, and it was wrong. And what ended up working was so I was desperate, and I thought, okay, man, I got to figure something out. And I reached out to a cousin who I'd burned already. She didn't trust me, and rightfully so. I had been in her house, and I lost her trust. But this time I came with a different approach. I said, I just give me another shot. Give me 1 month. I said, I got a breathalyzer, and I said, I'm going to give you this breathalyzer. You're going to give it to me every day. And if the one day I miss, I'm out the door. And so there's that. And then we made up some other agreements, like I would go to AA, which that plan kind of shifted, but I did go to therapy every week. So I had to go to therapy every week. I had the breathalyzer. So there's accountability, and I chose it. I made the plan myself.
Nice,
and I think
nice.
for my character, for who I am, that part was important. So yeah, it was, that's what ended up giving me at least a toehold, I at least had like one toe on the side of the cliff,
Couldn't agree more. But I mean, it's lovely that you say that. I mean, here in Steps to Sobriety, there's a chapter in there, what's the perfect rehab? And the reason I wrote that is because when I was so lucky. I went into the first rehab. I had no clue, but it turned out to be like heaven for me, and it worked really, really well. And it happened to be a 12-step based program. But it just hit all the mark for me. Having said that, at the same Friday when I was admitted in my 4-week rehab program, another girl was admitted, and she had been to half a dozen or even a dozen of rehabs. And one of them was, like you said, a work camp. It was a labor camp. She was basically picking cucumbers and peppers and shit for the whole week. And then Saturday morning, they had sort of 2 hours of, let's come together and talk about addiction. And what a bullshit. That was free slave labor, basically, for 9 months that she was there. And the very first thing she did was straight when she came out of there, straight to a bar and got plastered. No surprise. So therefore, rehab is not rehab. And when people say, hey, I failed in rehab, then, it is not necessarily their fault. It maybe has far more to do with the circumstances and the exposure that they had to really meaningful approaches to highlight the underlying trauma and the reasons why they were trying to escape their reality. Wow.
Yeah, I agree, man.
Oh, brother. So your cousin needs a little medal, doesn't she? So obviously she stuck it out with you. Having said that, we all have relapses sooner or later, and there's certainly 80% in the first year. So whilst the first month went, and then the second month went, and how did the future continue?
So yeah, and so I kind of for the sake of brevity, I skipped over all the times that the month only was a month or the week was only a week, but that month. So an important part of that was it was probably about 3 months in. I lost my grandmother, and so that was I was doing well, right? I was sober for the 3 months, but when she passed, it gave me another breath. It solidified things. The path became stone for me. It wasn't a slippery, gravel-ridden path any longer. It was a very smooth and paved road, and I was on it. So, that when she passed, it was definitely a development that solidified where I was at and where I was going. So
beautiful. But and again, there you had a new trauma occurring, and kudos to you, because in your case, that new trauma, actually solidified things. I recently, over the last year, my marriage was failing, and I ended up in quite a tailspin. And I had a relapse over Christmas, and it was certainly not pretty. But it is, and that's over 10 years of basically having my shit together. So things will happen. Life will continue, and life will continue to throw you challenges left, right, and center. But it's up to us to feel the emotions, accept them maybe for what they are. And that all takes time. So that healing takes time. So I'm not necessarily surprised about your story that there were so many new starts, so to speak. I think that's normal because you can't just have a lifetime of maybe not so great decisions and maybe shit that has happened to you. And then suddenly one day, yes, I'm sober. And now I don't know, unicorns and sunlight shining out of their ass. That is just, nah. So trauma comes in layers, healing comes in layers. So what kind of healing did you get exposed to? What kind of, how did you deal with the anxiety? How did you deal with the shame, the guilt? How did people actually maybe help you, guide you towards reframing your story?
Yeah, I have this new approach. It's something I've been talking about is that addicts, like, they make the world go round. And here's what I mean by that. Elon Musk, he's addicted to innovation. He's addicted to starting really cool businesses, right? Your Mother Teresa was addicted to peace. Gandhi was addicted to pacifism. It's like there's these addicts that we don't call them addicts because they're not using substances, but they're addicted to something, and they're addicted to really cool shit. So it's like, okay, guess what? Yeah, those people are addicted to something that's useful, and those people are addicted to things that people admire. And so we've raised them up and we put them on these pedestals. And so my point is that
Yeah.
I'm an addict, right? So I'm like, I need to get valuable, and I need to start becoming addicted to cool things. And I did things that aid and guide me and add value to myself and others. And so one of those was physical fitness. I started with jumping jacks. I started with I was like, I'm going to do 3 minutes. I was 265 pounds. So I was much heavier than I am now. And I was like, I'm going to do jumping jacks for 3 minutes, not straight, like 3 minutes in a 24-hour period. And I got done and I felt like I got hit by a truck the next day. It was a very meager beginning.
Exactly.
But I leaned into it and I did more of it. And so that was a really good source of strength, and it gave me a direction and with my energy. So I still have the same energy. I'm still an addict. I still go nuts with whatever my mind is on. So now it was something that was like, okay, you can go nuts and exercise and get all that energy out, and you're good. You're helping your body, and so like it was things like that. And so that was really what I was doing.
Yeah.
Now, when you mentioned the other people like helping me, I could say that my personal story was most like what you call like monk mode. I don't know if you've heard that monk mode. It's like when people shut their world out and they're kind of just like working on themselves. And so that's what it was, man. It was that for years.
Okay. Interesting. So where did the ideas come from? The reason I'm asking is it's all quite cool to do that self-improvement, etc., work on yourself, etc. But you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes it takes other people to listen to you and then also to listen to what you're not saying and ask you questions towards that hole that you are, that blindness, that blind spot that you didn't see. And suddenly they say, well, actually, let's talk about grief, or let's talk about loss, or let's talk about whatever it is. And suddenly this curveball comes and you think, what the fuck? Didn't see that coming. And that's where then your growth happens, because it's those things that you don't know. How did these things happen to you? You can't create the wheel from scratch,
Yeah. Well, I'm a believer. I'm a faithful person. I happen to be a Christian, and so I pray a lot. And so one of the prayers I often go to, is to guide my attention. I pray that my attention is guided. And so when I see something that I'm enthusiastic about, that's where I find those answers. And it could be a person, it could be a group, or like for instance, I got into running Spartan races. I started running these obstacle course races, and so I found a lot of lessons there. I found a lot of very cool people. I was finding these little hidden nuggets all over the place, and again, it's like they're not where you think they're coming from, and then all of a sudden somebody hits you with something, and it doesn't have to be somebody close to you. It could be somebody you've only seen one time. You've seen them one time. They say something to you. And then it's almost like they're gone. It was like they served that purpose for that moment. They entered, they said something, and they left. And then, but for the rest of the day, you're thinking, oh, wait a second. Yeah, wow. It just keeps coming up, So
I hear you. I hear you, brother. Absolutely. And that's why I'm so grateful to meet people like you on my show, because you use words maybe in a little bit of a different way. And I suddenly think, So every single show, there are aha moments for me, and there's growth for me. And it's amazing. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And for us to be eternally curious and eternally thirsty for things. Now, you could call that addiction in its own right, and I love it that you actually rephrase the addiction. In all fairness, I was a workaholic long before I was an alcoholic. So, but then again, in our society, that is very much, oh, look at him, what he has achieved. Yeah, external validation. And in reality, no one knew how empty I was inside many, many moons ago. Here you go. So very great similarity is there. The Spartan races. Many people don't know what Spartan races are. Tell us a bit about it.
Oh, it's just like an obstacle course. It's basically a bunch of grown people doing monkey bars. That's what it is. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Getting in the mud. It's like, and then you pay money to go there. It's funny because I thought about that. I'm like, I just paid a couple $100, and then here I am, I'm covered in mud, and I ran around in the woods for a while. That's more than that. It's a community. It's very cool. It's an awesome thing. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, if you distill it down, it's like, I just climbed on some things like a child, and I paid a lot of money for it.
And got the bruises and got the mud in your face for it. That's cool. Which is actually cool. But then again, you are exposing yourself. You are there's some stress inoculation, some fear inoculation happening there. There is some internal validation happening there because you're actually training towards something. You're putting integrity. You're practicing integrity by actually turning up to your training, by going for it. These are very different habits than the habits that you had in the past, where you were just a whim to your oh, I need another line, or I need another drink, or whatever it is.
And there's one more element too that I share with people. When you have a deadline in the future, like the race is the race. You can't make excuses. You can't say, oh, hey, can we reschedule the podcast? No, there is none of that. It's like, hey, the race is happening. You've got to be there. And so that's that element I saw and noticed. I thought, man, that's really cool, because that level of accountability for an addict is important. So,
I like that. I like that, actually. You're quite right. The deadlines. I did never appreciated their importance until you now said it. But actually, when I looked over my achievements in the last year, there were a lot of deadlines when I did certain courses, became a breathwork yoga dude, and flexibility yoga, etc. There were deadlines. That was then. By midnight on Sunday, we want to see you doing X, Y, and Z. And I thrived on that. It made me accountable to myself. And that's actually quite cool. So good point. Very good point. So basically, small measurable goals. Oh, that one day at a time, or oh, Matt, 1 minute at a time. For food, one meal at a time. But there is the privilege of choice, and you were no longer the victim. You were turning into a survivor, and nowadays into a thriver, because you actually set yourself goals, measurable goals. You keep yourself accountable. You create a vision of who you want to be. You know that you will be the winner of that monkey bar race, of the Spartan race. You create that vision, and then you work towards that, and it becomes a mission. This is cool shit. Okay, this is amazing. But how do you start with that? And I love it with your jumping jacks. You just take the smallest, tiniest goal, but just do it. Okay.
Yeah. It's a relentless proclivity for action. If you can curate that in your life, you're unstoppable. But that's easier said than done. I get it. I understand. But it's but I think it goes back to before the actual action starts, the attention to the enthusiasm is, because if you're doing something you absolutely despise, and despising something is a little different than disliking it. I disliked the jumping jacks at the time because I was bad at them. They were hard for me. But like, if you can, things that you absolutely despise, you just like thinking to yourself, like, this is the worst thing I can imagine. Then you're not going to continue it because there's no real reward. And so then if it's all like hatred, then you're not going to continue. So it has to be something that you're enthusiastic about, but also difficult to do. And there's a blend there, right? So it's before the actual action is the attention to what that thing is. And so like, podcasting is a great example. It's like, okay, I think I like the idea of having a show, but I'm a little nervous talking in front of people. Now, if you go to do it and you absolutely crumble into pieces and you cry in the corner, maybe you don't want to do it. But say you're a little bit sweaty and you're a little bit anxious, but you get through it and you think, oh man, like that was hard, but it was cool, like.
Absolutely. And what an achievement. You have jumped over your shadow, man. You dealt with the butterflies or the bloody jumbo jet that is in your gut. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. And again, you think there will be times when you come off a show and you think, did I just do that? Wow. Okay. And it feels so bloody good. It feels so good. And you can train yourself to do that, okay? You can train yourself. And I call it the 5-minute gardener. I try to do 5 minutes of an activity, of something every day. And imagine you've got a garden and you spend 5 minutes every day in the garden, never less, never more. After a week, you would find, do you see a difference? After a month, your family thinks, oh, the garden looks nice. After 3 months, you get bus tours coming along and checking your garden out. So it's small, measurable things, but consistency in those things. And there will be times that you don't like to do anything in the garden. Well, 5 minutes, neither here nor there. And there are other times when you actually think, oh shit, 5 minutes over. No, maybe I do 10, etc. But it's the consistency. And suddenly the jumping jacks are no longer so difficult. And suddenly you are actually having fun whilst you're doing it. Now, could you imagine doing the same trick maybe with your budget? Whoever likes to do a budget, and but maybe looking, 5 minutes one day, looking at the outgoings of your cocaine habit. Oh, okay, sorry, we have moved on. But okay. So let's go into takeaways. Okay, $50,000 takeaway bill, as Robin Williams said. So no, take one day you look at your expenses, and the next day you look at your insurance cover. The next day you look at that. After 2, 3, 4 weeks, you have got a handle on your finances and your wealth. How cool is that? Maybe the same with your relationship. So no, you
Yeah.
are the
Yeah.
classic example. You're a man.
Yeah, it's a glorious thing when those the wins stack up, you know, because they start small but they grow exponentially, and then before you know it, it's like, just like you said, I just did that, like whatever that is, like, oh my God. But so if you can ride that wave and then just own those small wins, they will grow on. They will grow.
Exactly. Oh man. Oh wow. Ah, if you had a time machine and you could go back now to a younger version of yourself, what message would you send back to the younger version?
Well, that's so tough. That's a tough question, and the reason why is because I love my journey. It didn't feel good at the time. I do.
No,
It's the source of my resilience. It's the source of my gratitude. It's the
for sure.
source of those shitty moments. All those shitty moments are a reason for the why I cry of happiness almost daily, right? It's because of those moments. So if I were to forego those moments, if I were to forego, say, go back to my younger self and say, hey, take it easy, man. Don't buy more cocaine. But I bought more cocaine, and that's how I got here. So I can't be. Not that that's a plan of action.
I
I'm just.
I hear you 100%. And I think virtually everyone who is on this show, if I ask them, if I allow you to go back, would you change your life? And most people, I don't think I've ever come across anyone who said, yes, I would change everything. Most people say, no, actually, no, I wouldn't change a thing, because otherwise I wouldn't be that person who I am today. And I 100% subscribe to that. So well done, man, Ryan. I mean, you are the classic example of your proof that the past does not equal the future. You are the proof that um, that recovery is not just possible, but highly likely if you do take the right steps, if you listen to the right people, and if you actually um, just put your mind to it and let your soul heal, let your trauma heal. And you wrote about it, because you don't just come onto shows, you actually wrote a book. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I have one here for a shameless
Yeah,
plug.
exactly.
It's Man Up, Sober Up. It's a book about, it's a mixture of memoirs and strategies that I used.
Yeah,
And now I didn't come up with all these strategies on my own. I stole them from people much wiser than myself, and I packaged them up in this book. But
good.
it's several tales of being at the stony bottom, you know, the rock bottom, and so yeah, they're undeniable stories that provide a little bit of entertainment, or maybe even a little bit of sadness. But I got through them, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and ruin the ending. It's right here, you know. So
Although you gave
it's
it a good shot. I mean, to be in a diabetic coma, because you basically you numbed your pancreas this much. Well, that's a good try, man. I give you that.
yeah, I gave it a run. So I managed to get it together, organize it into this book, and I'm
Yeah,
out here talking about it. And I don't claim that it's the silver bullet, because I don't think there is a silver bullet for anybody that's suffering from these substance abuse and alcoholism or
yeah.
addiction. There's no one cure all, but maybe it's. And in fact, I know it's helped out several people now. It's been doing well, and so I'm out here telling my story, and it's a liberating thing, and it's been an amazing adventure, and this is an amazing step by becoming a self-published author and getting this word out. Man, it feels great.
Congratulations, brother. Definitely. Show us the title once more.
Yeah, it's Man Up, Sober Up. This is an author copy. It's kind of got a bar here, but you
That's
can
cool.
also go to my website, ryanpenley.org. It's that simple, ryanpenley.org. And I got the book there, and then a link to purchase on Amazon, and I would greatly appreciate that. And I think you would too. Meaning, I'm speaking to your audience. I think there's a lot of value there, and so yeah, go to my website, ryanpenley.org, and check it out.
Well, guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast because Ryan's links are down there. What have you got to lose, guys? Hey, this is look at the two of us, two numbnuts here who have made all the mistakes for you and packaged them nicely into a book. You know, you've got Ryan's book, you've got my book. Just go out there and just pull the band-aids off and actually have a look at the pus in your own life. And maybe it's time to actually just start healing. And it doesn't matter where you are at in your journey. There is hope. There is help. And I think that is something that I didn't know when I was in the darkness. And Marie, Ryan, you also felt, no, the shame and the guilt can sometimes be such destructive forces that keep us from seeking help. And that's addiction lies to you. There is help. There is hope out there. And we too are proof. And Ryan is proof, So go out there, check his book out. When you're looking down there, you might as well press the like and the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of the cool interviews that I've got the privilege to do with some wonderful people, Ryan included. And tell your friends and your grandma and your mum and force them tell them under the threat of, I don't know, I'm baking them a cheesecake that they have to eat from you, that they should check out my show as well. The more we can share our passion for telling the truth and opening up and having difficult conversations, the easier it is for some people out there to say, well, actually, if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. I think this is why I do that. This is why Ryan has written his book. This is why we both are here. So Ryan, thank you so much for being such a beautiful, authentic, and honest, humble man. I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much for being a guest on my show, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No trouble at all. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Eh? Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.